Well, good day to everyone joining us, and welcome to today's X-Talks webinar. Today's talk is entitled The New Gold Standards of IRT Delivery for Clinical Trials. My name is Andrew Jordan, and I'll be your X-Talks host for today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 30 to 40 minutes, and this presentation includes a Q&A session with our speaker. This webinar is designed to be interactive, and webinars work best when you are involved, so please feel free to submit your questions and comments for our speaker throughout the presentation using the questions chat box, and we'll try to attend to your questions during the Q&A session. Now, this chat box is located in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you require any assistance, please contact me at any time by sending a message using that chat panel. And at this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode, and please note that this event will be recorded and made available to you for future download. And a big thanks to YPrime, who developed the content for this webinar. YPrime offers more than a decade of focused work with eClinical systems to expedite and improve the quality of patient management, clinical supplies, drug accountability, and clinical data. Cloud-based interactive response technology and electronic clinical outcome assessment platforms offer sponsors greater speed, precision, and integration in clinical trial management. Their data services and tools help sponsors bring together fragmented clinical research data into contextual information they can count on. YPrime's technology and service offerings enable sponsors to move faster and more efficiently to the next development milestone. All right, and now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today's webinar. Grant Dietrich is Vice President Strategic Partnerships at YPrime, bringing 15 years of focused experience in eClinical and interactive response technologies. He provides strategic, operational, and business development oversight for the company's key accounts. Now, prior to joining YPrime, Grant served in roles such as Director of Account Management, Associate Director, Project Management. In his earlier roles, he served as a project manager where he designed and managed IRT and ePro systems. Following his U.S. Army position as an emergency room nurse, Grant began his industry career as a project manager for Merck. He earned a master's degree from the University of Oklahoma and a bachelor degree from Rutgers. And without further ado, I would like to hand the microphone over to your speaker for today, Grant Dietrich. Grant.
Thanks, Andrew. I hope everyone is having a good day so far. It's spring, of course. Feels a little bit like summer here in Raleigh. Some people aren't so happy about the expedited summer, but as a Jeep owner, I'm loving it. So let's get to it. Today we're going to talk about IRT, its now and its future. But first, there's a little work for you. We have our first of two polling questions.
So you can vote on this question real time. Thanks for doing so. And I'll share the results with you now. Looks like 59% of you said greater than 8, 13% of you said none, another 13% saying less than or equal to 5, 10% saying less than or equal to 8, 13% saying none, 5% of you saying less than or equal to 3. With that, Grant, I will send the mic back to you.
Appreciate it. So clearly we have a lot of people that have worked with IRT throughout the years, so it's good to know that. So let me get started. Interactive response technology, which we all know, also known as IWR and IVR, has been the operational workhorse for management of patient randomization and drug supply since the beginning of automation in clinical trials. Early IRT systems centralized randomization events and increased in capabilities as clinical trials grew in size and complexity through the 1980s and expanded globally through the 1990s and 2000s. During that expansion, IRT allowed for more sophisticated clinical supply packaging designs. This led to the use of IRT beyond the initial randomization and dispensation visits. In today's data-driven research environment, the new IRT gold standards support state-of-the-art study designs and research technologies. IRT helps to achieve the biopharma industry's greatest needs to improve patient safety and data quality while reducing time and cost. New generation IRT systems go beyond the fundamentals to offer more functionality, visibility, flexibility, and quality. Today's advanced systems allow sponsors to fully control materials management, site and patient interactions, and dosing scenarios, and treatment schedules down to the individual patient and material unit levels. They provide real-time data functionality and sophisticated analytics in systems that are fully configured and customized for specific trial needs from phase 1 to late phase research. Evolving IRT technologies continue to advance clinical trial management. This webinar will summarize what sponsors can look forward to from the newest IRT systems. Next, please. From simple voice response systems to speeding up subject enrollment in the 1980s, IRT systems have evolved to meet the increasing demands of large global studies. The demands of complex protocol needs required greater IRT functionality to support enrollment, randomization, and supply chain processes. Today's sophisticated IRT systems integrate drug supply, EDC, and multiple data streams with real-time capabilities and built-in analytics and business intelligence. The latest advances, like those being engineered by YPrime, deliver these expanded capabilities in ways that give sponsors more visibility into their study data and more flexibility to make changes while a study is going on. Next, please. An evolving approach used to quickly customize and configure IRT functions, tailored to the needs of the study, is the modified agile approach. This approach puts the sponsor at the center of the system design process. It shortens the time to delivery and ensures that the system meets the sponsor's expectations. Traditionally, IRT systems are built using the linear waterfall approach. This process moves step by step through 6 major tasks to deliver a customized system to meet the operational needs of a protocol. These are the requirements gathering, design, development, validation, UAT, and go live. The waterfall approach involves extensive programming and typically requires 6 to 8 weeks for development at best. In most cases, the sponsor does not see the system until UAT, a point when changes tend to be larger in scope and involve significant delay, unneeded expense, and unnecessary stress. Next slide. And this is the second of 2 polling questions.
That's right, Grant. And that now is appearing on your screen. So you can vote on any of these any of the answers by clicking on your screen right now. The question we have for you: how many weeks did it take the last IRT system you worked on to go live? Was that less than or equal to 4 weeks, less than or equal to 6 weeks, less than or equal to 8 weeks, or maybe even greater than 8 weeks? Looks like most of you have voted on this polling question. Thanks for doing so. You can get your last clicks in now. I'm going to be closing polling and sharing the results with everyone. There we have it. Looks like 45% of you said greater than 8 weeks. 29% saying less than or equal to 8 weeks. Another 24% saying less than or equal to 6 weeks. Just 2% of you saying less than or equal to 4 weeks. And with that, Grant, I'll hand the mic back to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Certainly interesting. So the agile approach, as we go through it, hopefully will trigger some thought. So an agile approach improves on the process in a number of important ways. At YPrime, the agile process merges the pre-validation steps, which are requirements gathering through to development. Using an agile approach can reduce the traditional 6 to 8 week development timeframes to 4 weeks. Key to this streamlining is the early involvement of the sponsor. Working with the IRT project manager and the design manager, the sponsor helps to confirm the design while making small corrections along the way. Doing this ensures the delivery of a clean, high-quality system, virtually error-free at the UAT stage. Once the basic requirements are understood, system developers step away to configure and code basic functions. The project manager invites the sponsor to view this first iteration. The sponsor is asked whether the study's needs have been understood. With the help of the design manager, the PM and the sponsor then configure the screen functions together on the spot as needed. And the sponsor views the configured screens immediately with a click of a button. Consulting and developing in this way requires deeper and broader expertise, of course. Project managers need to understand the protocol requirements and must anticipate the IRT needs and risks. For example, they need to identify potential conflicts between the protocol design and IRT functionality and implement modifications where appropriate. They need to ask good questions to anticipate possible protocol amendments and other changes that may occur after the system goes live. Next. In 2017, sponsors can expect a faster, cleaner system development based on an agile type approach. Sponsors can expect more functionality, more flexibility, and more control to implement IRT changes during the course of a clinical trial. Sponsors should look for flexible systems that provide for quick and efficient changes as the study progresses. Data changes, for example, like adding a new study site or changing common site entry errors. These types of changes used to require contacting the help desk and waiting a few hours or a day or even a number of days for turnaround. New systems can be designed to give the sponsor or a CRO the ability to change specified data points themselves. Now, system changes still require intervention of a system developer, but using the agile-based approach, PMs and designers can anticipate study changes that might be needed to support IRT systems, from adaptive designs to phase 1 requirements. IRT project managers can plan for changes like the possibility of a new treatment arm that could be introduced, for the possibility of a new dose scenario or something like that. And they can make these variables configurable to avoid costs and study delays, typically associated with traditional system changes. Next. Sponsors should look for full control and simplified management of patient enrollment, randomization, dosing scenarios, and treatment schedule. Sponsors should look for real-time access through reporting to support adaptive trial designs, rapid decision-making. Systems designed specifically to manage complex phase 1 studies can be configured to provide critical safety alerts and reporting. For example, those in oncology that involve complex dose-finding regimens. User-friendly, intuitive designs can help minimize site training needs. New systems provide full visibility and easy workflows. For example, YPrime provides a landing page for patient management with patient demographics and their individual next available transactions based on their status. In another advancement, YPrime offers a unified platform that combines IRT and ECOA systems. Doing this helps align interdependent study operations, for example, a dose that must be administered following an ECOA entry. Next, please. Today's IRT system integrates multiple data streams to manage patient interactions and supplies globally. This is able to be done through a single platform across functions and stakeholders. An investigator can confirm dose administration based on a patient's last diary entry. Study leaders can review whether the patient enrollment rate is as planned and can confirm whether the forecasted materials are still aligned with that rate. Integration enables the sharing of multiple data streams to support real-time reporting. Reporting needs to be provided based on a use case because CRAs and executives certainly have different interests as far as data needs. CRAs want to dig into the details. Executives, of course, want to see the trending. Screens display aggregate data and individual data points, allowing users to track patients, sites, and drug supply status, and to identify operational trends. Embedded analytics and business intelligence let users graph trends based on selected data, such as projections of patient visits and drug demand. Reports are available through web portals and also through mobile devices to support global management. Several IRT vendors offer downloadable apps which provide visibility and analytics from the convenience of a smartphone. Graphs and reports are available through YPrime's mobile app, YPGo, which is, for example, allowing a user to monitor current site enrollment versus plan targets in real time. Next slide, please. Sponsors expect complete visibility into the supply chain. They need end-to-end management from drug release through to reconciliation and destruction. The IRT provides full control based on that visibility. More sophisticated IRTs offer uncomplicated pooled and bulk material management solutions. YPrime, for example, provides a pooled system that allows studies to be added and removed through a configuration. No complex custom coding, no extended timelines that delay your study's progress, no hefty change order value. Pooled solutions are successful in reducing packaging and distribution expenses. With improvements to how IRT systems are configured, they promise significantly better cost efficiencies. Next slide. IRT systems drive clinical supply inventory. When clinical supply forecasting is available directly in an IRT, this functionality allows study teams to create more supply chain efficiencies by projecting drug supply needs from enrollment performance. Teams can also schedule repackaging and labeling based on actual use patterns. Intelligent and timely actions can be carried out through real-time reporting and system interactions through the IRT, or through the IRT data being integrated to a sponsor's or distribution vendor's own system. Next slide, please. Some IRT systems can keep patients engaged and informed in a blinded and protected way. When a patient is screened, their email address is securely stored and can be used for a number of event-specific reasons. For example, instructional emails triggered by individual visits, like dose instructions, information about managing their condition, access to visit schedules, post-study updates, such as information about study results or treatment approval. The content can be dynamically populated by specific triggers, ensuring timeliness and relevance to the study participants. This feature is especially useful for extension studies. It also provides ongoing touch points when there are several months between visits, a period when patients are most likely to drop out of a study. Next, please. As pointed out earlier, a few providers are offering unified platforms to deliver faster and more capable joint IRT and ecosystems. In these platforms, the use of a unified portal and joint database eliminates the need for complicated system integrations between these two commonly used systems. It eliminates data duplication, it eliminates the separate system development process, and it eliminates separate management obligations. With all the data in one location and it being visible in one study portal, study teams and site users have the benefit of better efficiencies in system functionality. There are new possibilities for patients and clinician assessments, and there is more complete reporting capabilities. Next. So, IVR has definitely come a long way since the 1980s, definitely since I've gotten involved into IRT. The new IRT gold standards will continue to evolve as advancing technologies offer new high-quality solutions and reduce time and cost in clinical research. Ahead, real-time data capabilities coupled with mobile health technologies will have increasing impact on clinical trial operations, enabling more patient-centric approaches and virtual trial designs. And IRT will continue to support emerging research methodologies in this innovative biopharma landscape. So I'd like to thank everyone who's joined this webinar on the new gold standards of IRT delivery for clinical trials. And we'll now have some time for a few questions.
That's right. Well, thank you very much for that, Grant. Really some helpful information there. Thanks for sharing that with us. At this point, I would like to invite our audience to continue sending their questions and comments in right now using that questions window. For this, of course, is the Q&A portion of the webinar. And Grant, we've received some questions here already. So let's get started with our first question. So for an agile approach, how do you control the requirements because you're designing while developing? Your thoughts on that?
Sure. Well, spec sign-off is achieved prior to test closure and UAT. And there's also a QC check to ensure all elements of the final spec have been tested. So that's how we're able to handle that.
All right, excellent. Thanks for that. For the patient direct communication, how do you control patient confidentiality?
That's a good one. It's fairly simple. So the entered email address or the phone number would be obfuscated as soon as it's entered. So it's similar to when you're entering a new password for any type of an account that's being set up, to where there's an X after you enter each particular point, and then it remains obfuscated throughout the course of the trial.
Okay, thank you for that as well. Grant, you were speaking about data changes being completed by sites or CRAs. How does the IRT control this?
Okay. I think what you might be asking about is how do we make sure, or what they're asking about is how do we make sure the right person is able to make a change and whether the change being made is allowed per protocol. We're able to control that by user group and the rights associated with that user that will dictate whether they're able to change a particular data point or not. It's also able to be controlled in a manner where it could be stage-based controlled. So as an example, maybe there's a stratification variable that's asked during screening. Maybe for the protocol, it's appropriate that the variable can be changed prior to the patient randomizing, but certainly cannot be changed after. So a control would be in place on who can do it and when they can do it.
Okay, interesting. Thanks for that. Another question here, how does configured pooling actually work?
So the materials database is used as a system anchor. The study-specific elements are then configured and coded, and then effectively the study-specific system can be bolted onto that materials database base. And then we can bolt on a study and unbolt it, and through that configuration, it's fairly simple and straightforward in comparison to how it's being done overall currently.
Okay, thanks for that as well. Grant, this audience member writes, what about DEA 222? Could this be adapted to the report?
Certainly. A lot of what we've seen with the 222 form, there's certainly standards associated with it, but there have been nuances on protocol and how a sponsor manages that form. So we would be able to customize the system. Ideally, it's a standard that would be developed for that particular sponsor. So then moving forward, the IRT vendor would be able to apply those expected processes and practices for how they manage the 222 form.
Okay, thank you for that. Grant, for more complex studies where the core technology does not support the study design, is customization allowed in the YPrime system?
Yes, absolutely. In the most simplest terms, yes, we're able to customize based on the need of the protocol and also need of the sponsor. Ideally, we would be developing standards along the way because, as everyone knows, a sponsor has their own nuances, like what was suggested in the last response for the last question. So we would be building based on those customizations and also along the way identifying whether customizations are going to be standard from system to system.
Okay, interesting. Thanks for that as well. Grant, what about temperature excursion? Could I quarantine or release in IRT, and can you comment on how your system handles temperature excursion management for drug shipments and site storage in general?
Sure, absolutely. We're able to handle it in probably 3 primary means. It can be done through entry, where when you're utilizing the IRT system or performing a transaction. We can also have we have the ability to upload. So maybe you have a USB stick that can be uploaded, or the data can be uploaded directly into our system. And then the third way, it's able to be done through integration of whatever the source data point is, whoever the tail company might be.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that as well. Moving on now to another topic. What are your thoughts on the evolution of IRT into mobile app from phone and web? And do you see the use of mobile apps streamlining the clinical trial process, especially around drug dispensing?
So I think where we're seeing the most use with mobile app is through informatics, as far as having that real-time capability. You're sitting at the airport and you want to check trending or you want to check a data point. It's a lot easier to open up your phone. As far as transactions, I think the industry overall is seeing some mixed reviews, certainly at the site level, on how much a mobile device is being used as opposed to a PC for performing patient transactions. In a lot of cases, they're still using a PC. However, transactions are able to be made available, but I still think we have to let it mature a little bit. But from my point of view, I would not be surprised based on what I'm seeing so far if sites continue to use a PC over a mobile device, as an example, sitting in a patient room, because they don't want to take their attention away from the patient. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for that. Another question here for you. How is drug management handled, such as adding new lots and drug kits into the system? Is this user entered or through your help desk?
So it's really going to depend upon the design and the practice or process followed by the sponsor. The transactions can be provided to be able to perform the steps. And actually, if we want to get very techy, we could do it through integration, where we would be able to integrate our system to the distribution vendor, so updates made in their system could be passed directly over to our system. And help desk, of course, can assist.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for that as well. Another question here for you. IRT integrations with other systems like EDC, EPRO, etc., are always a problem, according to this user, or attendee rather. Can you talk about your experience and how complicated it is with your system?
So primarily the goal, if we're looking at an iterative type process, is you need to have a good specification. That ends up being the route to integration, all system development, obviously. But I think it's making sure that there is good communication between an EDC vendor, as an example, and the IRT organization. as far as ensuring that there's a full understanding of how the database structure is appearing on the EDC side in comparison to the data that's being captured in the IRT, and making sure that we're speaking to each other appropriately. So I do think the root is on having a very solid spec and ensuring that there's good interaction. Now, for integration that we're seeing on a repeated basis, so as an example, if we're working with a distribution vendor on a regular basis, it would be sitting down and working with that vendor to determine if standards can be established. Same thing with the EDC side. Ideally, then, we would be able to have a pre-defined standard of integration, which reduces a lot of what the person is referring to as far as some of the challenges that we see.
Okay, thanks for that, Grant. Another question here. This audience member is writing, amendments to an IRT are inevitable, and I'm used to waiting weeks or months to get changes made live. Can YPrime handle amendments faster?
Well, I think, as indicated in the presentation, I think one of the important things is to have a conversation early on in the design of the system. While we're sitting down, putting pen to paper, having a conversation on anticipated amendments that could come through. A lot of times there's already some suspicion on what changes might come, and we can prepare for that in a way where we can have a configurable approach already designed and developed into the system. Now, with that being said, the changes that come through as far as an amendment, it's really going to be dictated based on the complexity. There are some amendments that we might see come through where the protocol is completely reconfigured in purpose and what's being assessed, in how it impacts the IRT system. So it's really going to be based on the complexity. But again, ideally, we're having that upfront conversation and we're getting as much intelligence as we can to be prepared.
Right, okay. Noted. Thank you for that. Another question here, can you customize the IRT for blinded and unblinded team use at the site as well? For example, an unblinded team receives all the drugs but hands over non-IMPs to a blinded team for storage and dispensing to the patients. Your thoughts on that?
Sure. It sounds like what they're talking about is an unblinded pharmacist type of role. Certainly, yes, that can be controlled. Typically, it's controlled through user group association. So you would have an unblinded pharmacist user role, which is unblinded, for example. The type of information and the access that they would have would be dictated by that role. So maybe it's they might be responsible also for receiving materials, and they're able to see unblinded details associated with that. It might be that they're performing the transaction for the administration, because there might be some constitution that needs to be done, or reconstitution that needs to be done of the medicine. But then with the blinded user, there again, through user group association, we would be able to control the information they have access to. So maybe there's a confirmation of the unblinded pharmacist performing their dispensing transaction, and there's a blinded confirmation that would go to the CRA, or not the CRA, the study coordinator, as an example. But it would not list any of the unblinding details. It would simply say that the dispensation is able to happen for the patient, etc. So again, back to the short answer, that can be controlled through user group association.
Okay, noted. Thank you for that as well. Another question, we were talking about this in reference to IRT. What is your thoughts on mobile devices for eCOA compared to using the web?
I think it's a little bit different. Certainly the response that I provided for IRT it isn't necessarily the same one for eCOA. There's definitely a move towards a bring your own device in the industry overall. I do see the usability of it. It makes it a lot easier for the patients, for sure.
Okay, great. Thanks for that as well. Another question here, does YPrime have a method to track study drug retains?
So as far as the overall drug supply management process, we're able to handle controlling from release all the way through to destruction. The short answer certainly is yes. But again, back to what I was saying, we would earlier as far as needing to understand the needs of the specific sponsor.
One more question here for you, Grant, at least. If your system includes forecasted patient information, does it also forecast and simulate required shipments to sites globally?
It can be set up to do that as far as to be able to forecast distribution needs. So yes.
All right, excellent. Thank you for that. And thank you everyone for all of your questions today. We have reached the end of the question and answer portion of this webinar. If we weren't able to attend to your questions, however, today the team at YPrime may try to follow up with you after the webinar. But if you do have any further questions, you can direct them to Grant via the email address showing on your screen right now. That's gdietrich@yprime.com. And thank you everyone for participating in today's event. You'll be receiving a follow-up email from X-Talks with access to the recorded archive for this event. And a survey window will be popping up on your screen shortly. Your participation is appreciated as it'll help us improve our further webinars. Now I'm just about to send you a link in your chat box. You can say thanks to Grant and YPrime for the webinar today. I encourage you to do so. Thanks very much, Grant. Great Q&A and great presentation today.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Thank you everyone for joining.
We hope that you all found this webinar informative today. Have a great day, everyone.